Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. Beneath the wide Kansas sky, Will Harper's farm stood as a monument to 5 generations of grit and perseverance. But when a powerful HOA, led by a manipulative ex-lawyer, set its sights on his land, Will faced an impossible choice: surrender his family's legacy or fight against relentless greed. And fight he would. The morning sun rose over the rolling fields of Kansas, casting a golden hue over the land that had been in the Harper family for 5 generations. For 58-year-old Will Harper, the land wasn't just property, it was a living, breathing testament to his family's legacy. The 180-acre farm, aptly named Harper Fields, was purchased by Will's great-grandfather in the early 20th century after returning from World War I. Over decades, it had evolved from a humble plot into a thriving farmstead, hosting rows of wheat, soybeans, and corn, alongside a few dairy cows that Will and his wife Maria managed in their semi-retirement. Life on Harper Fields was far from extravagant, but was filled with a sense of purpose. Will and Maria enjoyed the simplicity of their days: early mornings tending to the crops, afternoons repairing machinery, and evenings spent on the wraparound porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Even with their children grown and moved away, the couple felt a profound connection to the land that had nurtured generations of Harpers. This connection made the arrival of the Silver Creek Estates a bitter pill to swallow. The sleek housing development, with its cookie-cutter mansions, pristine driveways, and imported palm trees, had appeared almost overnight on the neighboring parcel of land. The once quiet surroundings now buzzed with the sounds of landscaping equipment and SUVs. Though Will was irritated by the change, he tried to keep to himself. "Live and let live," he often muttered, waving politely at the new residents when their paths crossed. But the Silver Creek Estates weren't just any housing development. The Homeowners Association, led by the self-assured and conniving Philip Keynes, soon made its presence felt. Philip, a former corporate lawyer with a knack for manipulation, had taken it upon himself to improve the neighborhood, a mission that often involved strong-arming anyone who stood in his way. Will's first encounter with Philip came at a local farmers market, where the HOA president approached him with a disarming smile and a proposition. "Mr. Harper," Philip began, his tone oozing with artificial charm, "I represent the Silver Creek Estates HOA. We've been considering a proposal to construct a new road that would connect our neighborhood directly to Highway 22. It would reduce congestion, make the area more accessible, and undoubtedly increase property values. All we need is a small portion of your northern field." Will didn't need time to think. His answer was firm and immediate. "Number this farm isn't for sale, not a single acre of it. I'm sorry, but you'll need to find another solution." Philip's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before he recovered. "I understand your hesitance, but I think you should reconsider. This road would benefit everyone in the area, including you. Imagine how much easier it would be to move equipment or produce." Will cut him off, his tone resolute. "This land has been in my family for over 100 years. It's not going to be carved up to make someone else's life more convenient. The answer is no." Philip's eyes hardened, though his voice remained even. "Well, that's disappointing to hear, but I'm sure we can revisit this discussion in the future. Sometimes a little time changes perspectives." As Philip walked away, Will felt a chill creep up his spine. There was something unsettling about the man's demeanor, calculated as if he wasn't accustomed to taking no for an answer. Over the following weeks, Silver Creek residents became more vocal about their desire for the road. Will heard whispers at the local diner about how the farm was an eyesore or how its boundaries cut off the community. Signs of trouble began to emerge. Strangers parked along the edge of the property, surveying the fields. Letters from the HOA requesting cooperation appeared in Will's mailbox. Though Maria tried to reassure him, Will's instincts told him the HOA wasn't going to give up easily. Determined to protect his land, Will took action. He contacted Matty Crow, a trusted attorney with experience in land disputes. "Document everything," Matty advised. "Install cameras, put up signs, and keep every letter or notice they send. This might get messy." Will wasted no time. The next morning, he placed large, unmistakable signs along the perimeter. "Private property, no trespassing." He set up surveillance cameras to monitor the northern field and started organizing decades' worth of deeds, surveys, and other legal documents. The land wasn't just his livelihood, it was his legacy, and he was ready to fight for it. It began with the hum of machinery in the distance, faint at first, but enough to pull Will Harper from his early morning routine. He stepped onto his porch, coffee mug in hand, scanning the horizon. The northern field, his pride and joy, stretched out in neat rows, untouched by anything but his careful stewardship. That's when he saw it, a survey crew, dressed in orange vests, pacing across his land with tripods and measuring tapes. Will's heart sank, then surged with anger. He had been clear with Philip Keynes. His land was not for sale, yet here they were, blatantly ignoring his refusal. Slamming his mug down on the porch railing, Will grabbed his boots and stormed toward the northern field. By the time he reached the crew, his voice was already raised. "What the hell do you think you're doing on my property?" The lead surveyor, a wiry man with a clipboard, looked startled, but quickly recovered. "We're with Silver Creek Estates, just taking measurements for the proposed road project. We were told this area was cleared for surveying." "Told by who?" Will demanded, his voice low but furious. "Mr. Keynes," the man replied, gesturing toward the sleek black SUV parked just outside the property line. Will's gaze shifted to the SUV, where Philip Keynes leaned casually against the hood, arms crossed, watching the exchange with a smug expression. Will felt his blood boil. "Get off my land," he barked at the survey crew. "You have no right to be here." The surveyors hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances, but Will's imposing figure and fiery tone left little room for argument. They began packing up their equipment. Will marched to the edge of his property, stopping just shy of the SUV. "What part of no didn't you understand, Keynes?" Philip straightened, his smile unshaken. "Will, you're being unreasonable. This road benefits everyone. The surveyors were just doing their job." "On my land, without my permission," Will shot back. "I don't care how you spin it. This is trespassing, plain and simple." Philip's smile tightened, the mask of civility slipping slightly. "This is bigger than you, Will. The community needs this road, and you're standing in the way of progress. If you won't cooperate, we'll find other means to move forward." "Go ahead and try." Will snapped. "But if I catch anyone on my land again, I won't just send them packing. I'll press charges. Now get the hell out of here." Philip's eyes narrowed, but he climbed into his SUV without another word, the tires kicking up gravel as he sped away. Over the next week, the tension escalated. Every morning, Will found subtle signs of intrusion, a corner post of his fence knocked loose, fresh tire tracks cutting through the edge of his field, and even a few survey flags staked defiantly in the ground. Each time, Will documented the evidence with his phone and sent it to Maddie Crow. "They're testing your boundaries," she said during one call. "They want to see how far they can push you before you break." Will wasn't about to break. He reinforced the fence, added more surveillance cameras, and even installed floodlights along the property's northern perimeter. Maria, always his voice of reason, urged him to stay calm. "They're trying to provoke you," she said. "Don't give them what they want." But it wasn't just the physical incursions. The HOA launched a smear campaign against Will, targeting him in neighborhood newsletters and social media posts. They painted him as a stubborn, outdated farmer who was holding back the community and damaging property values. One flyer, mailed anonymously to residents, claimed that Harper Fields was an environmental hazard, alleging that pesticide runoff from the farm threatened Silver Creek's water supply. At first, Will shrugged it off. He had never cared much for the opinions of outsiders, but when Maria showed him a thread on the community's online forum, his jaw clenched. The comments were vicious. "Can't believe one guy is allowed to ruin it for everyone else. Typical entitled farmer, thinks the world revolves around him. If he won't sell, the county should just seize the land." "That's slander," Will growled. "They're lying about me, about the farm." "And we'll prove it," Maddie assured him. "But you need to stay focused. The more evidence we have, the stronger your case will be when this goes to court." The tipping point came on a cloudy Tuesday morning. Will was walking the fence line, checking for damage, when he spotted something new. A construction crew, trucks loaded with equipment idled just outside his property, while workers unloaded pallets of concrete and rebar. They weren't on his land yet, but the implication was clear. Before Will could confront them, a worker approached him with a clipboard. Mr. Harper, we're here to begin preliminary work for the road project. Just need your signature to confirm access. Will stared at the man, his disbelief quickly giving way to anger. You need to leave, now. The worker blinked, clearly unprepared for resistance. Sir, we were told this was approved by the HOA. I don't give a damn what the HOA told you, Will interrupted. This is private property and you're trespassing. The man hesitated, but before he could respond, Will took out his phone and began recording. You see that sign, he said, pointing to the large private property notice behind him. This land is not part of Silver Creek Estates. If you or anyone else sets foot on it, I'll call the sheriff and have you removed. The worker mumbled something about just following orders before retreating to his truck. That evening, Will received an official letter from the HOA. It was filled with legal jargon, but the message was clear. The HOA intended to move forward with the road, claiming they had grounds under eminent domain. Enraged but determined, Will called Maddie. They're not stopping, he said. Neither will we, Maddie replied. This fight has just begun. Unbeknownst to Will, the HOA was already preparing their next move, a bolder, more aggressive attempt to seize what they wanted. The battle was only heating up. The following weekend began with an uneasy calm. Will Harper spent the morning repairing a section of his fence damaged earlier in the week, all the while feeling the weight of impending trouble. Maria noticed his distracted demeanor as she brought him lunch. You're expecting something, aren't you? She asked. I don't trust them to play by the rules, Will admitted, gazing toward the northern field. They're too determined to stop now. His instincts proved correct. That same afternoon, the sound of heavy machinery shattered the silence. Will rushed to the northern field and found construction vehicles boldly driving onto his property, their operators acting as if they owned the place. Workers were unloading rebar and digging equipment, while bulldozers idled nearby. Enraged, Will stormed toward the foreman, camera in hand. What do you think you're doing? This is private property. The foreman, a stout man with a clipboard, glanced at him indifferently. We've been contracted by Silver Creek Estates to begin work on the road. Our papers say this land has been approved for construction. Will didn't even try to mask his fury. Approved by who? I own this land and you're trespassing. He raised his phone to capture every detail. The vehicles, the workers, the materials. The foreman hesitated, seemingly uneasy under Will's scrutiny, but didn't order the crew to stop. Instead, he gestured toward a familiar figure standing near a sleek black SUV. Philip Keynes. Keynes sauntered over, his usual smugness now laced with defiance. Will, he greeted, as if they were old friends. I warned you this would happen. You can't stand in the way of progress forever. Will squared his shoulders. This isn't progress, it's theft. You have no right to be here, and you know it. Philip's grin didn't falter. We've exercised our rights under eminent domain. This road benefits the community, and you're out of options. Will took a deep breath, steadying himself. If you think you can bully me into giving up my land, you're dead wrong. I've got everything documented, and the sheriff will be here soon. Let's see what he thinks about your so-called rights. Philip's confident mask cracked for a moment, but he quickly recovered. Do what you have to, Will. This road is happening, whether you like it or not. True to his word, Will called the sheriff, who arrived with deputies within the hour. The officers reviewed Will's documents and confirmed his ownership of the land. Confronting the foreman and his crew, the sheriff ordered them to cease operations and vacate the property immediately. As the workers packed up their equipment, Philip attempted to argue, claiming the HOA had legal authority to proceed. The sheriff, unimpressed, handed him a stern warning. Until a court rules otherwise, this land belongs to Mr. Harper. Any further unauthorized entry will result in arrests. Philip left without another word, his jaw clenched in barely concealed rage. That night, Will sat with Maria on the porch, trying to enjoy the quiet. But the battle was far from over. The HOA's tactics shifted, becoming more insidious. Flyers appeared in mailboxes around Silver Creek, accusing Will of blocking vital community development and damaging property values. Online forums buzzed with angry posts, many laced with personal attacks. Maddie Crow, always one step ahead, began preparing for the next escalation. They're trying to isolate you, she said during their late-night call. They'll keep pushing public opinion against you, hoping you'll cave under the pressure. But this is where we fight back. Will's resolve only hardened. He knew Keynes wasn't done, but neither was he. For Will Harper, this was more than a fight for land. It was a fight for his family's legacy, and he wasn't about to let it slip away. The next escalation came as a coordinated strike, one designed to push Will Harper into a corner. It started with a letter, thicker than the ones before, delivered by courier early one morning. Inside were not just demands, but a detailed notice from Silver Creek Estates HOA claiming they had filed for eminent domain. The letter declared their legal right to seize a portion of Will's northern field for public benefit. Fuming, Will immediately called Maddie Crow. She reviewed the documents and noted irregularities. "This is pressure tactics," she explained. "The filing isn't finalized. They're trying to scare you into giving up before you realize they don't have a strong case. But there's something else here. These maps." The maps included in the letter falsely redrew property lines, claiming Will's land was partially within Silver Creek's jurisdiction. Maddie's voice grew sharp. "These are doctored. I'm sure of it. We'll use this against them." Within days, the HOA's strategy turned from legal threats to outright aggression. Early one morning, as Will inspected his field, he discovered heavy tire tracks carving through the newly planted soil. They hadn't started construction, but the clear message was, "We can come in whenever we want." Will's surveillance cameras caught everything, from the vehicles entering the property to their operators intentionally damaging equipment left near the edge of the field. The footage enraged him, but he knew better than to act impulsively. Instead, he forwarded the video to Maddie, who immediately filed a restraining order against the HOA on Will's behalf. Philip Keynes didn't take the legal setback lightly. That weekend, the HOA organized a community meeting at the Silver Creek Clubhouse, framed as a discussion about the road project. Will received an anonymous flyer inviting him to defend his actions in front of the residents. Against Maddie's advice, Will decided to attend. "I won't let them control the narrative," he said firmly. When Will arrived, the hostility in the room was palpable. The Silver Creek residents, stirred by months of misinformation, greeted him with glares and whispers. At the front of the room, Philip stood, his posture exuding confidence as he gestured to a large poster showing a map of the proposed road. "This project is vital to our community's future," Philip declared. But one man stands in the way. When Philip gestured toward him, Will stood tall. "If you think I'm going to let you walk all over me and my family's land, you're mistaken," Will said, his voice calm but forceful. He pulled out a folder and displayed his own documents. "This is my property. These are my boundaries. Your maps are fraudulent and your actions are illegal." The room murmured as Will distributed copies of his deeds and photographs of the damaged field. Maddie, standing by his side, presented the legal documents backing their case. The crowd's initial hostility began to waver. But Philip wasn't done. With a smirk, he revealed his ace, a false report claiming Will's farm posed an environmental hazard. He had fabricated evidence that pesticide runoff from Will's fields contaminated local water supplies. "This isn't just about a road," Philip argued. "This is about public safety." Will's chest tightened, but Maddie stepped forward. "These claims are baseless," she said sharply. "We've already reviewed their so-called evidence. It's as fake as their maps. And we have proof of their trespassing, vandalism, and harassment." Suddenly, an unexpected ally rose from the crowd, a Silver Creek resident named Diane, who had grown suspicious of Philip's behavior. "I've seen your tactics, Philip," she said, her voice steady. "You're manipulating us to serve your agenda, not the community's." Her words ignited murmurs of doubt among the crowd. Philip's polished facade cracked as he struggled to maintain control of the narrative. That night, Will left the meeting with mixed emotions. The battle was far from over, but cracks were forming in the HOA's united front. As he drove home, the lights of Silver Creek faded in his rearview mirror, but the weight of the fight lingered. The stakes had never been higher, and Will knew Philip would retaliate with everything he had. But Will wasn't alone anymore, and for the first time, he saw a glimmer of hope in the storm. The courtroom was packed. The tension was palpable as Will Harper sat at the plaintiff's table with Maddie Crow by his side. Across the room, Philip Keynes and the HOA's legal team exuded their usual confidence. But it was clear their veneer was starting to crack. This case was no longer just about a road. It had evolved into a battle over the limits of power and the right to private property. Maddie began the proceedings with a clear, methodical opening statement. She presented the jury with evidence of trespassing, vandalism, and harassment, alongside the doctored maps the HOA had used to justify their actions. She emphasized Will's legacy, his family's farm, cultivated over generations, and the deliberate disregard shown by the HOA in their aggressive tactics. Our client's property was invaded and damaged without consent, Maddie declared. The defendant's fabricated documents and environmental allegations are not just deceitful, they are illegal. This is not about progress. This is about bullying a man off his rightful land. Philip's attorney countered with arguments about the supposed benefits of the road and accused Will of being obstinate, claiming he was a selfish landowner standing in the way of community improvement. Their star evidence was the fabricated environmental report, which they hoped would sway the court in their favor. But Maddie was ready. She called an independent environmental expert to the stand, who systematically dismantled the HOA's claims, proving that the report was a complete fabrication. The expert's testimony was damning, exposing not only the falsehoods, but also the malicious intent behind them. The most explosive moment came when Maddie presented the surveillance footage of the trespassing and vandalism. The jury watched as HOA hired workers brazenly damaged Will's property. Then came the clincher, audio recordings of Philip's threats, where he explicitly admitted to using pressure tactics to force Will into compliance. Philip squirmed in his seat as the courtroom fell silent. The evidence was irrefutable. In his closing statement, Maddie appealed to the jury's sense of justice. This case is about more than a road. It's about the right to stand up to powerful entities that believe they're above the law. Mr. Harper didn't just fight for his land, he fought for what's fair and right for all of us. After several hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. The court found in Will Harper's favor on all counts. The HOA was ordered to pay substantial damages for trespassing, vandalism, and defamation, and the eminent domain filing was invalidated. Furthermore, the court ruled that Philip Kane's fraudulent actions warranted additional personal liability, leaving him exposed to further legal repercussions. As the gavel struck, a wave of relief washed over Will. Justice had prevailed, and the farm was safe. But beyond the victory, he knew this case had set a powerful precedent, one that would resonate far beyond the boundaries of Harper Fields. In the weeks following the courtroom victory, the ripple effects of the case were felt far and wide. The once unshakable Silver Creek HOA was in disarray. Philip Kanes was forced to resign as president, facing not only public disgrace, but also a mounting number of personal lawsuits for his fraudulent actions. Residents of Silver Creek, many of whom had supported the road project without knowing the full truth, began demanding sweeping reforms within the HOA. A new interim board was established, and for the first time, the community prioritized transparency and fairness over authoritarian control. The road project was officially abandoned, and the HOA issued a public apology to Will Harper. Though Will didn't particularly care for the words, he appreciated the broader change in tone. They would think twice before meddling with someone else's property again. On Harper Fields, the scars left by the conflict slowly began to heal. The northern field, once marred by tire tracks and torn-up soil, was replanted and began to sprout new life. Will and Maria found solace in their routines, though the weight of the fight lingered in quiet moments on the porch. The victory brought unexpected recognition. Local media hailed Will as a defender of individual rights, and other landowners reached out to thank him for setting a precedent. "You stood your ground," one letter read, "and gave all of us the courage to do the same." But perhaps the most meaningful change came from within the community itself. Several Silver Creek residents began visiting Harper Fields, apologizing for their earlier hostility. Some even brought their children to see the farm, now a symbol of resilience. One neighbor, Diane, who had spoken out against Philip during the meeting, helped organize a small gathering to celebrate the farm's legacy, bridging a gap that once seemed insurmountable. For Will, the fight had never been about recognition. It was about preserving his family's legacy and standing up for what was right. As the seasons turned, Harper Fields remained steadfast, a living testament to justice hard won. As the sun set over Harper Fields, casting long shadows across the freshly replanted northern field, Will Harper sat on his porch with Maria by his side. The fight against Silver Creek Estates had taken its toll, weeks of stress, countless legal battles, and moments of doubt. But now, as he looked out at the land his family had nurtured for generations, he felt an overwhelming sense of peace. "This place has seen storms before," Will said, his voice steady. "And it'll see them again, but it's still standing. So are we." Maria smiled, her hand resting gently on his. The battle had taught Will more than he ever expected. It wasn't just about preserving his farm, it was about standing firm in the face of injustice. The fight wasn't easy, but it had proven that even the most relentless adversaries could be held accountable when truth and determination were on your side. Word of Will's victory spread far beyond the quiet town. Farmers, landowners, and even urban residents saw in his story a powerful lesson. No one, no matter how wealthy or connected, had the right to trample over the rights of others. Will's case became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories are won not through compromise, but through steadfast refusal to back down. The moral of his journey was clear. Standing up for what's right isn't just about protecting what you own. It's about preserving principles that matter to everyone. Whether it's a farm, a home, or a way of life, justice belongs to those willing to fight for it. As dusk turned to night, Will raised a glass of iced tea to the horizon. "Here's to Harper Fields," he said softly, "and to never letting anyone tell us what we can't do." Maria raised her glass in agreement, and together they watched the stars appear over the land they had fought so hard to protect.